NFL Week 6 kicks off with Atlanta at New Orleans on Thursday night. Another one of these lines in the NFL. It seems a little bit obvious, and we will talk with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com to get his take on this line. I'm Peter Loshak. You're watching SBR Videos. Joe Duffy, a lot of these kind of obvious or too good to be true NFL lines recently have cashed. I was spooked a little bit by the Arizona line on Sunday. I was thinking it was too obvious. The public was all over it. But then I said to myself, you know what? I am going to bet it big. I did, and it cashed. And then you had the Pats line, which I was too scared to go for, and that one turned out to cash easily as well. We've seen the same thing with Cincinnati lines recently. Now, I don't think this is necessarily on that caliber of a play, but it still seems just a little bit too obvious. Atlanta, we know how awesome they are. New Orleans, we know how much they're struggling. Atlanta -3. Why would that not be a good play on Thursday, Joe?
Well, Peter, it's funny because I think we've had this conversation before. Over the years and really over the decades, every time I have a friend of mine say something like, oh man, I have this NFL game this weekend I absolutely love, or a couple NFL games this weekend I absolutely love, even if they're talking about football pools. Remember what I always say to them? I'm like, okay, which road favorite do you think is so obvious?
Whoa. Joe Duffy, Exhibit A, New England at Dallas. This past Sunday, it was an obvious play, a road favorite over a touchdown. But in retrospect, it was a sharp side. There's no way you can make the argument that anyone who bet on New England was being stupid.
No, I was not going to make that point.
Okay, all right. I jumped the gun a little bit there, Joe Duffy. I apologize.
Yes. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was one of the games we previewed last week. I know I'm very honored that you asked me to do quite a few, but as I said, on that opening line, I think it was an opening line of 7, and I said I loved it at 7. Then they bet it up to 9.5, and I said, yeah, you got to be a little careful because 2.5 points does make a big difference. But you're right. It's not like you're completely wrong. I'm like, yeah, the public definitely loves road favorites, and road favorites are going to cover it about 48% of the time. So it's not like they're a disastrous play. The reason I don't think it's as obvious as you say, keep in mind that, the Falcons' record is a little bit deceptive. They did, of course, win in overtime, and of their 3 of their wins, they outscored their foes in regulation by a combined 6 points, which then, of course, you can add 6 points for their overtime win yesterday, as we do file this on a Monday. And even another one of those wins, a 4th win, was to those Dallas Cowboys in their first game, where they were minus both Romo and Dez Bryant. I think it was their first game. Yeah, it was their first game minus both of those guys. So Atlanta is 5-0, but they're not necessarily a dominant 5-0. It's not to say that I like the other side. I just don't know if it's quite as obvious. If anything, I'm leaning a little bit more towards the over. I was a little nervous because I do think there's a possibility Drew Brees on a short week could be on a little bit of a pitch count, but Atlanta has a very diverse offense now. The Saints clearly are living and dying off of the pass, yet their pass defense is beyond awful. They're allowing 8.8 yards per pass to teams only getting 7.1. That is terrible. They're allowing teams to get 1.7 yards per pass above their normal average. Obviously, Atlanta more than they have the best pass-catch combination in the NFL, so they certainly have the ability to exploit that. But the Saints are at least getting 7.3 yards per pass to 6.4. So I think really the best play, as you would say for the purposes of this video, is the over. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just warning the public out there that the quote-unquote obvious plays, based on my personal anecdotal experience, if the public screams something is obvious, it's almost always a road favorite, and there's a reason why road favorites are usually about a 48 to 49%, actually about a 48% play over the years.
Well, I pounded Arizona last week, road favorite that the public was overwhelmingly on, cashed easily. I didn't go for a New England road favorite the public was overwhelmingly on, and I should have. Maybe things are changing in the NFL, Joe Duffy.
I mean, it could be, but I will say this. If you're going to, bet, as the public likes to do, bet road favorites every week, you're going to go on some nice winning streaks, and you're going to have a few more losing streaks than winning streaks. So I'm just trying to, it's more of a generic warning to caution, people who just fall in love with the game. And then if it's a road favorite in the NFL, I'm just telling you that is generally the biggest square play, is falling in love with a road favorite. But it's not to say, I've bet and won with plenty of road favorites over the years, believe me.
All right, well, right now the line is New Orleans +3 or 3.5. The total is very high, 51 or 51.5. Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Do you want to give us a free pick here for the purpose of our record keeping in these videos, or do you want to make it a pass?
Now, I will give the over. In fact, I found that there is when teams are undefeated and it is a high total, it actually goes over. And in fact, the more wins and the higher the total, the more likely it is to go over the total, at least percentage-wise. But even if as low as 3 wins, and as long as the total is not obnoxiously low, it's already an over when you're involving an undefeated team. And if you want to have a 47 or higher, and a team with at least 5 wins, it's going over to 33-18 rate, which I think comes out to about 62%, if I'm not mistaken. Higher percentage, but a smaller units won than some of the other systems where you can lower it as low as 3 and put the total as low as even in the 30s. A couple with very low totals have gone under. But basically, I do think a lot of metrics point towards the over here.
All right. Thanks for your thoughts, Joe Duffy. Over 51 is his recommended play in this one. Joe Duffy, tell us what's going on at offshoreinsiders.com right now.
Another great year going back to the preseason. College and pro football had a bigger weekend in college than the pros, but it's been a great year. It's actually been a better year overall in the pros, only because we've had a couple extra weeks going back to the preseason, so we've had more time to win. But offshore insiders, remember, this is a week where they're starting to play more on weeknights. So if you've never used offshoreinsiders.com before, great week to start.
Thanks for your thoughts, Joe.